Clerk and Ashley Sander. I forget your last name constantly, Ashley. I'm going to learn. I've known you too long as another name. So a little bit after 4 right now, we'll start the meeting. If everybody will stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Just
to the flag
of the United States of
America,
and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
liberty and justice for
for
all.
all.
We could have just a moment of silence, please, for recognize our military, all our first responders, and anybody going through the COVID epidemic right now or pandemic right now. Thank you. Again, I'll call the roll because I should have called it properly to begin with. I'll call you as I see you here. Commissioner Persinger.
Here.
Commissioner Jasinski.
Present.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer.
Here.
And our town attorney.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
And our town manager, Mr. Zolper.
Here.
And our town finance clerk, Sheena Gossett. And our town clerk, Ashley Sander. I think I've gotten everybody. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion.
So moved by Mr. Bauer, second by Mr. Persinger. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous, Ashley. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to accept the March 2nd public hearing town commissioners meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Bauer. Who's second?
I'll second.
Mr. Persinger, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous. Do I hear a motion for the March 12th, 2021 monthly town commissioners meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Persinger, second by Mr. Bauer. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
against, say nay. And any abstentions? Unanimous. Do I hear a motion for the March 22nd, 2021 town commissioners meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved by David Jasinski, seconded by Commissioner Bauer. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous. Next item is the committee reports. We have an item, marketing committee fundraiser report. Mr. Bauer, in general, if you will give that report for the marketing committee.
Yeah, really it's just an extension of what we had already. Let me go back to my notes here real fast. So the last meeting was on March 18th. The group walked through and made updates on the content, promoting the beautification project. They've sent that over to, I believe, Ashley, did you get a copy of that? And Bill?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that's been forwarded over, and that mailing will be going out in whatever our next regular mailing from town is. Ashley, do we have a date on that?
There's not a set date, but it is in the works. It'll go out, I'd say, within the next 2 weeks. It'll
Okay.
be email.
So that'll be going on. The group also discussed, how the town doing a press release and, a web page that would mirror, what the mailing content has. Get a little social media monies come or advertisement of what we're doing here to hopefully get some more donations. There's some upcoming events for volunteering. We have we've done the Baywalk planning and the Easter egg scoop deal. I have to think, because those two were the last ones we did volunteers for. So I don't think I have anything right now, but I'm sure there'll be something coming up pretty quickly. The next marketing meeting is scheduled for April 15th at 5:30. It's a Thursday evening. And we're going to review some of the progress and see what our next steps is and come up with some new projects to get working on as well.
Is that all, Mr. Bauer?
Well, the only other thing I could say is that is a fantastic marketing team. They come up, they're very creative and they come up with good ideas, and their heart's in the right place for this town.
Mr. Bauer, I fully agree with you. I've been attending a couple of those meetings and they're very excited about what they're doing. I just wanted to make sure all the commissioners are up to date on what's happening. We had problems in the past where sometimes the commissioners didn't feel they knew what the marketing committee was doing. And this new committee has really been on the ball and following through on their items. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Ashley, we're down to public comment. Is there anybody on the line for public comment?
Not for public comment, no.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll move forward. Announcements and updates. And Ashley has kept me attuned on this one. I'll try to do it right. Accommodations tax for all those who rented their houses, their abodes here in Dewey Beach between October 1st of last year and March 30th of this year. Your accommodation tax is due April 15th. So if you did rent your house during the winter, your accommodation tax assessment is due on the April 15th. The residential rental permits were due April 1st. So if you're going to rent your house, you plan to rent your house and have in the past, you should get your residential rental license now. The commercial business license were due March 1st. If you have a business in town, and whether it's open or not, if you have a continuing business in town, if you plan to be open or you are open now, your rental license, your business license was due March 1st. Please come to town hall and take care of that. And then parking permits, the annual parking permits for Dewey Beach go on sale April 12th. And go into effect May 15th through September 15th. So if you're getting ready to come to Dewey and you want to park, after May 15th, you're going to need a parking permit, and they go on sale April the 12th. Anybody else have any other announcements or updates the commissioners might want to give? Hearing none, we'll move on. Action item, discussion item number 1. Presentation by the Center for Inland Bays on their new fundraising effort for the James Farm Ecological Preserve, which is a cooperative partnership between Sussex County and the Delaware Center for the Inland Bays. I believe it's Anna Short from the Center for Inland Bays. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, well, thank you.
Thank you for being here. We're really quite interested in what the Center for Inland Bay is doing. The center has been very cooperative with us and helped us a lot, and we want to be of help to you guys. So you can fill us in on your presentation.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll see how that works. How does that look to everybody?
Looks good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good? All right. I'm going to go ahead and jump in because I know y'all are busy. So first, I just wanted to start off with a little bit about the center for those of you that aren't familiar with who we are. So the Center for the Inland Bays was established by the Delaware General Assembly as a nonprofit in 1994. This was the culmination of more than 20 years of public participation and investigation into what was happening with the inland bays, why their health was declining. So our mission as an organization is to preserve, protect, and restore Delaware's inland bays and their watershed. The inland bays watershed is indicated on this slide in green here. And it essentially encompasses all of the land that drains into the bays, as well as the bays themselves. We accomplish our mission in a number of ways through community outreach, scientific research, restoration, advocacy, and of course, environmental education. Now, one of the sort of keystones of the environmental education that we do is the James Farm Ecological Preserve, which is a 150-acre collection of ecosystems down near Ocean View, Delaware. It was donated to Sussex County in 1992 by a woman named Mary Lighthype, and she wanted it preserved for the purposes of environmental education and outdoor recreation. It is open to the public year-round. Admission to the preserve is free. The center assumed management of the preserve on behalf of Sussex County in 1998. And since then, we've meticulously restored its ecosystems and seen an intense growth of visitorship. We're up over 37,000 unique visits per year, and that number just continues to go up. The centerpiece of the environmental education that happens at the preserve is our Day on the Bay environmental education program. This was established in the year 2000 as a partnership with Indian River School District, and since then it's served over 19,000 students with curriculum-aligned, science-based environmental education. Students that participate in the program get a full day of immersive hands-on learning relative to the preserve's ecosystems, the habitats and natural processes of the inland bays, some of the environmental challenges that they're facing, and how industries like agriculture and conservation work together to address those challenges. The program is really designed to nurture every student's relationship with the natural world, propagate future learning, and encourage action through community involvement. One of the very special things about this program is that the participants are primarily underserved students that reside in the Inland Bays watershed. Of those students enrolled in Indian River schools, nearly 52% are minorities, 32% come from low-income families, and for many, their day on the bay is their first opportunity to experience the bays despite living less than 20 miles inland. But despite the critical nature of this programming, it faces some challenges. Two of the greatest barriers are capacity and the elements. The only existing covered structure that we have at the preserve is a small pavilion that shares space with our maintenance equipment. And this lack of adequate shelter results in overcrowding and cancellations when the weather's bad. Maintenance activities share space with the education facilities, so program disruptions and safety are often a cause for concern. But thankfully, we developed a master plan to identify some improvements to address these challenges and some of the other challenges that are facing the preserve while significantly increasing the quality of our education programming. So, as I mentioned, when we originally developed this property back in '98, the facilities that we put in were put in piecemeal and without foresight of the intense population growth that Sussex County was going to experience. So as the popularity of the property increased and our educational programs expanded, the need to plan for this increased visitation and the expansion of programmings became evident. So we embarked on the development of a holistic plan that would address the needs of our preserve users while also collectively envisioning its future. So that's what you see here is a layout of the James Farm Ecological Preserve Master Plan. To develop this plan, we sought input from a number of key stakeholders, center staff, volunteers, donors, educators, elected officials, the whole nine. And what resulted was a plan that identified a series of infrastructure enhancements that would better serve residents and visitors of Delaware while also protecting the preserve's delicate ecosystems and improving those educational opportunities. So implementation of the master plan began in 2017 with phase 1, which focused on safer access to the preserve for our growing visitorship. Those enhancements included our brand new parking lot, which you see pictured there. It increased our vehicle capacity from 8 to 27 vehicles. It also installed a crosswalk over Cedar Neck Road and new sidewalks to ensure safe pedestrian access as well. We put in designated school bus parking so that students could get off and on the bus safely. And what you don't see pictured is a brand new multi-purpose event lawn, which allows us to accommodate more people at our community events and also provides open space for just general public recreation. So with generous support from Sussex County, the Outdoor Recreation Parks and Trails Grant Program, community transportation funds, and private donations from generous individuals, we secured all the funding that we needed, and phase 1 was completed in spring of 2019. So now we are on to phase 2, which is why I'm here to talk to you today. Phase 2 focuses on further enhancing that campus area infrastructure to better accommodate the environmental education programming, but also supporting the habitat restoration and research that we do elsewhere in the watershed. I've got a nice little layout of all the different infrastructure improvements here. So we have our big, beautiful education building. Down here in the corner, we've got permanent ADA restrooms that will replace our single porta-john that we currently have. There is a large maintenance facility over here that will house our large equipment. We'll have a fully equipped workshop for our volunteers that help us to maintain the preserve. There will be storage for our paddle sports concessionaire, Eco Bay Kayak, as well as a staging area for restoration materials that we use in other projects around the watershed. There will also be 2 outdoor classrooms. And then in the center here, we just sort of have a general recreational use area centered around a deck. So design, engineering, and permitting for these improvements is nearly complete. We're actually getting ready to break ground next week on the installation of our prefabricated restroom facility. And then we hope to begin constructing the rest of the improvements in mid to late summer, with full project completion in summer of 2022. But one of the important things that I like to stress about this project is that as we were reimagining this campus, every function and aesthetic that we considered, we want to be as unique and as appealing as the natural wonder of the preserve itself. And that includes the gem of phase 2, which is our education building. It's going to address all of those challenges related to capacity and the elements. Not only will it allow a greater number of students to participate, it will also ensure that we can continue programming when the weather is bad, and also provide a more immersive learning experience so that students can foster that meaningful connection with the outdoors. The features of the building will facilitate an elevated curriculum, but it will also allow for other programming, intergenerational public programming for families and adults that can come out and view film screenings, attend seminars and talks from special guests, and we can also host orientations for some of our citizen science volunteers. Ultimately, once it's complete, the building will be what we think is regionally important, a regionally important venue for environmental education, unlike anything that currently exists in Sussex. As I mentioned, we'll also be putting in that nice, big, beautiful maintenance area, separated from the education facilities so that we can minimize disruptions and allow these 2 important functions to occur simultaneously. And really the overall goal for this structure is just to allow us to better care for the preserve while supporting our restoration efforts elsewhere in the watershed. There are some enhancements that extend beyond the campus area. Those include the realignment of our trail system to address stressors like sea level rise, and also create a more immersive natural experience for our visitors. We'll be replacing and extending our system of boardwalks. There will be new wayfinding signage installed to better guide visitors on their exploration of the preserve, as well as updated and expanded interpretive signage that we'll place in 18 different locations. And these will educate visitors about the preserve's ecosystems, its agricultural history, and a number of other things related to the inland bays. And then finally, we'll put in a new entrance sign at the gateway area to increase visibility of the property and welcome visitors to the preserve. So here is a beautiful rendering put together by our architect, David D. Quillen. This provides an aerial view of the campus area. which shows the separation of the maintenance and education functions. On the left is the maintenance building, and on the right is the education building. You can see that they're centered around that circular access with the deck area and the recreation area. You can see some of the materials that we'll be using too. The roofs are angular, and we'll use a corrugated metal as its material. We really wanted the structures to be reminiscent of the agricultural history of the property and the heritage of Sussex County. And this is a ground level view of the education building. And in the background, we have our permanent restroom facilities here. And then finally, the maintenance building from the ground level as well. So, you know, that's all well and good, right? Sounds like a really cool project, but you know, who cares? Why is it important? There's three main reasons. One is that it provides environmental learning in the outdoors, and learning beyond the classroom is a portal to a wider world. The new facilities at the preserve will improve and expand the environmental education programming that we're able to offer, which heightens imagination and increases critical thinking in students, and it empowers them to take responsible actions in their communities. Another big reason is that outdoor recreation is good for us. It creates healthier communities. So improving access to the preserve ensures that Delawareans have the opportunity to not only further develop their relationship with the natural world, they can also reap the health benefits of time spent outdoors. And then finally, support for this project means a brighter future for the inland bays. Realizing the full potential of the preserve will give rise to more success in the center's restoration of the inland bays and their watershed through increased awareness of and philanthropic support of the center's mission. So how can you help? Donate, of course. We're in the midst of a large capital campaign to raise money for this effort. We have well surpassed our halfway mark towards our goal. So we're sort of in the final stretch of the race, if you will, and every little bit helps. You can also spread the word. Tell your friends, you know, when you see articles in the newspaper or hear stories on the radio, you know, share them with your friends and family, and just let them know about this exciting project and what we're trying to accomplish. And then finally, visit the James Farm, especially if you've never been. It truly is one of a kind piece of land. There's a lot to explore. And I just know that when you visit, you'll develop a connection, and you'll want to see it develop the way that we hope it will develop. And then lastly, just please keep in touch. I think you all are familiar with our website, but if you're not, I encourage you to hop on over, check it out, sign up for our mailing list. And you know, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is listed there. I'm happy to answer any questions, whether it's about the James Farm or any of the other work that the center is doing. I just look forward to making connections and to keeping in touch with all of you. So with that, I will open it up to see if anybody has questions about the project, or if you want me to backtrack and go over anything, happy to do it.
How many years have you had the James Farm property?
So Sussex County acquired it in 1992, and we took over as the managers of the property in 1998. So quite a long time.
Is there any other questions anybody else might have for Anna? Anna, what's the most important way that we as a town might help you?
I think helping us to spread awareness about the project and what we're doing. For sure, just getting the word out there and letting people know what's going on and why it's important.
If I might suggest that sometime after this meeting, you might get in touch with me and we could discuss some possibilities that I think of that the town might be involved in or might be able to get involved in and help the CIB, like the Center for the Inland Bays has helped us, and we appreciate it.
That would be wonderful. I would really appreciate that.
Mr. Persinger, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I'm just wondering if we were to visit the farm right now, what sort of activities or information or what sort of, walking tour is available and, what ages would that be appropriate for?
Great question. So we just launched our calendar of spring public programming. And I will be sure to send that to the group so that everybody can take a look at it. But it includes a guided nature walk. We offer birding tours. Both of those are appropriate for all ages, children all the way up through adults. And then we do have one specialized children's program that's happening now as well. So about every 2 weeks, we do those different public programs, and we've got our environmental educator that will walk through and talk to you about all of the different ecosystems and wildlife, all that exciting stuff. So I will be sure to send that schedule of public programs out, and then we should be releasing summer dates shortly as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Jazinski.
A couple of questions. So Anna, you mentioned you're about halfway through your fundraise for this project. What's the total raise that you're looking to do?
Our total goal for the campaign is $850,000.
Okay. And then should people just donate on inlandbays.org, or is there some special project that they should be donating to?
So they can donate online through the website. There is an area for you to provide a note associated with your donation. So in that space, just indicate that it is for the James Farm.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners or the other attendees? Well, thank you, Anna. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. We hope we can do a little something in cooperation with you guys to help you all out in this project.
That would be wonderful. And I thank each and every one of you for your time and attention today. I just love talking about this project. So, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You
you.
can continue to watch us online or as we move on or just drop off, one of the two, whatever suits your purpose.
I think it might be happy hour for me. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say, scintillating as the conversation is.
Better for you. Not in Dewey, right?
I'll never tell.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
gentlemen, ladies, we're going to move on to item number 2. Discuss and possibly vote to appoint a new member to fill an unexpired term on the Board of Adjustment. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Jazinski to handle this one.
Yeah, so guys, I'd like to nominate David Chewie, who's been a property owner in Dewey Beach now for over 20 years, and he's been a resident for over 10. And the guy's an attorney. He spent his full career at the Justice Department, and candidly, all the issues he had to do, a lot of them had to do with land rights that the government had to handle. It's not a direct, mapping to what the Board of Adjustment does, but it's kind of related. And I reached out to him to ask him if he'd be willing to do it because he seemed like a good fit. And well, you all know, the members of the public may not know that it has Board of Adjustment requires people to be full-time residents. So we have fewer people to pick from. And I thought he was a really good choice. And he's willing to do it. And he's got some very relevant experience that I think will be very relevant to the board. If anyone has any questions, that's fine.
And just for Mr. Townsend, I believe I'm correct in saying if this is approved, Mr. Chewie will be filling the unexpired term of the former member.
So we don't have any other vacancies. We have one vacancy.
Right.
What is the expiration date of the vacant term?
Now, see, I'm afraid you got me on that one. Ashley, do you know the Ms. Carell's
I don't know. I don't know that you need to proceed that way. I think you have a vacancy, and I think you can appoint her replacement with a normal term. You can fill the vacancy with a normal term would be.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you. I didn't know that.
I assume that's what you'd prefer to do.
That was my intention originally, but I didn't know where we stood on that. Thank you, Mr. Townsend. I appreciate it. So I would assume, is there a motion to fill to have a full term on the board to fill with Mr. Chewie?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Jazinski. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Stevens. Any further discussion on filling that vacancy? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Any abstention? Unanimous. Mr. Chewie will be the next member on that team. Thank you. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Jazinski. Item number 3, discuss and possibly vote to approve revised draft of the rules for the Bay Beach, Bay Walk, and gazebo. Mr. Persinger, I will let you start the discussion on this.
Okay, well, the draft that you have attempts to reflect the discussion that we had at our workshop of February 26th, as well as include any public comment that we had received through that date. Everybody's aware that we've received some additional public comments in the last few days. There's nothing in the current draft that reflects any of those comments. I have a few specific issues noted in the margins that we can go through, but I thought maybe we could just start with opening this up and let anyone raise issues that they believe that we should discuss that that aren't noted in the margins already, that you believe we need to resolve at this point.
I would like to make a comment, and then I'll recognize Mr. Jazinski.
Sure.
Remember, on these rules, they're like the rules on the ocean side, that we have a rule and then we have a way of enforcing that rule through the town hall administrative office. So, for instance, we have a rule that you have to apply for a permit to have a bonfire on the ocean side, and the way we regulate that rule is to say at town hall, when they get here, we tell them that we give permit for one bonfire at the end of one street for one day. In other words, it's not written into the regulation. The regulation is they have to get a permit, but the way we handle the permit is differently. So when you discuss these rules, you might get hung up on the difference. So please try not to. Mr. Jazinski.
So I guess my question is, we got a lot of feedback that I would generally sum up as people are concerned that the beach that's supposed to be public may become a little bit more private, special event focused than they might otherwise like to see. And I guess my question is really for Fred, and that the way this is written, does it allow the town to administratively say, no, I'm not going to give you a permit for the entire beach for Saturday in the middle of July? Or does it allow the town administration to say, no, I'm not going to let you apply for an entire season's worth of Friday night permits to close off part of the beach? What are they basically what I want to know is town administration kind of required to approve most anything they see, or do they have discretion to say, we're going to regulate how often it's done and how much of the beach you can have?
Mr. Townsend.
Thank you. I think it is understood that the administration can have an overriding set of principles, such as no one can make exclusive use of the beach. So in the process of fielding or receiving applications for a permit, I think the location of the activities would need to be defined. And I think that the administration would be in a position to say that your proposed use is too extensive, takes too much of the beach away from the public's use, which is a higher principle, and therefore it needs to be denied or amended. So I do think that with instructions like that, even if they would be difficult to reduce to wording, I think they can be applied by the administration.
Okay. That was my only question.
Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, just a quick question. Ashley, do we have anybody in the waiting room for public comment on this issue?
Yes, Kelly Ranieri is in the waiting room right now to make a comment.
We'll get to that after we get through with commissioners discussing, and then we'll get to the public, and then we'll come back to the commissioners.
Yeah, so I have other comments on it. So
Okay.
I still have the floor. When we look at, a lot of the emails that I've read, I'm looking at people don't want us to permit people using the beach where we've been doing it for decades. And all of a sudden this is brand new that, oh my God, we're permitting somebody having a wedding on the beach. And Ashley, how many people have been married on the ocean beach over the last 30 years, give or take? So,
Actually, not that old.
when Ashley wasn't, from the time you were born forward, Ashley. But no, I mean, how many on average do you think we have a summer? I mean, it's an enormous amount.
We have quite a few. I don't have a number, but we do have quite a few weddings on the beach.
Right. So, and I'm not sure that point was made public. I mean, I'm not sure the public understood that we already had this for decades. So, that's why I was a little shocked at some of the comments that we were getting on it is, don't allow more weddings on the beach. But I agree with how Gary's put this together. I mean, I think it's very solid. The only concern I have on it is the cleanup issue of it that we'll probably have to address. Because anybody that's getting a permit really needs to, take care of the cleanup as well, right? And that's probably part of the administrative part of it, Bill. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
So, yeah, we can't expect others to clean up other people's messes, although we do. Somebody ends up getting stuck with it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Anybody else have comments? Any commissioners have comments? Then, Mr. Persinger, do you want to comment in general, and then we'll go to the people online?
Yeah, let me just raise a couple of issues, and some of this came out of the comments I think that we've received. I mean, I think there's a concern about the number of events, and so I think we're going to rely for a lot of decision making on the people at Town Hall, on Bill Zolper and his staff, and I certainly think that they're well capable of handling many of these things. But there may be some questions about, what do you do about holidays, and should there be a firm policy? You can't rent a part of the beach during a holiday. And maybe there needs to be a policy that you can't rent the entire beach. And I know that there has been some discussion about designating a particular area where you might hold a wedding. And the area that I've seen designated clearly would not tie up the entire beach. There still would be ample space for people to enjoy the public beach. One of the other things that was mentioned, Mr. Bauer just mentioned the issue of cleanup. And if somebody schedules an event, I think they have to be clearly responsible for cleanup as well. And that needs to be a clear message that is delivered to whoever is holding that event. But I think there also needs to be some adequate and maybe even well-designed information exchange so that everybody knows when an event is coming, knows what is scheduled, and so that we don't have conflicting things going on in the beach. We don't have the potential for conflicting activities going on in that area. I mean, it's if you're going to hold a wedding there, you want to have the kind of atmosphere that you want for a wedding, if at all possible. So I think that all parties surrounding that area need to be aware of what's planned for that area. So I just wanted to mention those things, and we can come back to some other specifics, but I think it's a good idea to get some public comment.
Good. Before we go I have one last question of Ashley. Ashley, when we give out permits now for weddings on the beach, what time limit do we give them as far as when they can have it and how long it can last?
It's after 5:30 p.m. is when they can begin the setup. And I believe, I'm going to double check the time. I want to say it was about an hour that it can last, but I would have to double check that time.
Well, that's all right, Ashley. But in other words, it is a specific time, either before or after the beach is open.
It's
before or after the beach is closed.
Right, after the lifeguards are off duty, which is
Right.
the main part of the day. So it's after 5:30 they can begin set up. They have regulations, like the chairs have to be of plastic. They can't have certain materials on the beach.
Right. Okay. Now, Ashley, do we have somebody still online for a comment?
She is. Would you like me to bring her in now?
Yes, please.
Off duty, which is
Right.
the main part of the day. So it's after 5:30 they can begin set up. They have regulations like the chairs have to be of plastic.
Kelly, can you turn off your Facebook?
Wait, she's listening to YouTube. Can you turn off your YouTube? Do we have Neri still online for a comment?
She is.
Mr. Neri, can you turn down your YouTube and just stick with us online?
It is off, correct?
Now it
There you
is.
go. We can hear you fine, Kelly.
Go right ahead, ma'am.
Oh, I'm doing public comment now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Kelly Ranieri, Dewey Business Partnership, and also resident of 117 Bellevue Street. It is my strong opinion that the rules do not mirror the beach rules for a couple of reasons. Number one, the beach down at the Hyatt does not hold the true capacity that I've seen last summer. For example, I spent a lot of time down at that Bay Beach this summer, and there were a lot of days where hardly anybody was on it during the day. So to say in a day in July that I can't bring my dog on the beach at that time, oh, that's perfect timing. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's a different kind of beach. Second, as far as events and the weddings go, this was meant to be a town center. It wasn't meant to be a beach like the beach that we have on the ocean side. We have all the facilities there. So I don't think that the rules should really mirror the town beach on the ocean side, because this is a town center. It's meant for things to happen. And so, again, you don't have that capacity that you have on the ocean side with all the people up there. I did not see it this summer or past summer at all. And you may say, well, that was COVID and so on and so forth. That beach, the ocean beach, was packed. This beach was not. So to do all of the restrictions that happen on the ocean beach, it just doesn't make sense. I think we have a unique opportunity here to market our town to be dog friendly. You would like to have a wedding, have your wedding. And it should not be restricted to times. Ocean Beach, fine, because there's so many more people there. This beach, we have everything we need to make this special and unique. I think there should be activities. Dogs especially. Why say that dogs should not be allowed on that beach 24/7 when there's hardly anybody there? And it just doesn't make sense. We need to have unique rules there that support events and that supports our town as a unique town center, other than what the ocean beach is. Let's be practical and let's be sensible. If somebody sees a wedding going on, they're not going to allow their dog to run through. And if they do, it'll make for great photos. People love to see people getting married. So I think that they should be allowed to have weddings whenever they would like. And third, clear communication. Something needs to be set up where people can go online and have clear communication between the town and the Hyatt and whoever is having events there. Clear communication is key. And I think that really needs to be put in place. But I would not mirror the same thing as we have on the ocean. It's a unique spot. It's meant to be a town center. It's something different. Let's make it special and let's market it so that our town has what it was originally meant to be, a town center.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Ashley, is there anybody else in the waiting room?
Not at this time.
All right, I'm going to come back to the commissioners. And Mr. Bauer, you have a comment?
Yeah. And Fred, I need your legal advice on this, because I've heard the term rental. We're renting the beach. Is there a differentiation between renting a beach and permitting a beach? Establishing a permit to have an event on a beach?
Mr. Townsend, your comment?
Well, I mean, we have the authority to implement rules which make sense on the beach. It's recognized in the lease documents that that create the amenities or allow for the amenities, such as the beach walk. I'm not sure what the legal significance of this term rental is, or what context you heard that in.
Right, because, a lot of the emails we're getting is we're renting the beach out. And essentially, I'm not sure we're really renting the beach.
Let him
We're
finish.
doing a permit to have an event.
Okay, so the criticism is that the town is monetizing the beach.
Correct.
And I think any permits, for instance, that you grant and have granted on the ocean side are not intended to be fundraising efforts on your part. They're administrative fees associated with monitoring the setup and cleanup and all those things, but it is not an effort to generate revenue. And I don't think there is an effort to do that among the council, but if there were, I think it would be inappropriate. So permitting is a device whereby you can allow someone to have kind of semi-private use, but it is not done for purposes of revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Does that cover your question, Mr. Bauer?
Yeah, because I'm getting emails in here, it's the permit, we're giving somebody a permit that, that's the issue that we're trying to decide. Should we still give people permits to have weddings at Dewey Beach on an ocean or any beach? And I think I know where I stand on this thing, but I'm not sure where everybody else is. But yeah, I would hope we still continue to do permits to have events and bring people to town.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Appreciate it. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Gary made a great point when he talked about how outside, I believe, and Gary, correct me if I misheard you, but outside of these rules, there are policies that could be created at town hall, which are logical in the sense that, we're not going to allow these permits, for example, when it's Memorial Day or 4th of July, or when we're expecting very heavy volume days. I think because of, and this is specifically within this issue of, from a dog's perspective, I am a dog person. I always have been a dog person. I can tell you that, the emails that I've gotten have been very against it. And this is more of a suggestion for conversation. Is it possible for us to allow dogs on the beach, but give the lifeguards the ability to state if the Bay Beach is too congested, that there's a period, like for example, if it's congested, there's a sign, no dogs allowed today. Or if it's barren, that dogs can be allowed. Is that a policy that we could put in place so that we're not jumping to making this change? Because I don't know that we had that much of an issue last year with dogs, but at least it gives a little bit of the control back to the town or back to the lifeguards to keep everybody safe, which is really the intent. So just open that up for a discussion point. Because again, Gary, I think you did an awesome job on this document. But it's a way to put that into a policy versus a rule.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Is there any other comments from the commissioners other than Mr. Persinger? I'm going to go back to Mr. Persinger and let him start working on his overall document now and talking to commissioners about moving forward here.
Well, let me just comment on what Commissioner Stevens just said. I think there can and should be a set of administrative policies. And I would suggest actually that the town manager work with his staff and begin to develop that and maybe come back to us so that, and make this readily available to the public so that the public has a better sense of, what those more specific policies are that will guide the approval of special events and other activities on the beach. I don't think that should be a burdensome task. I think you're going to be doing that anyway. And Ashley has already told us about some things that they do on the ocean side that I'm not even sure are written down anywhere, or at least I've never seen them. I did a wedding on the beach quite a number of years ago, and I don't remember those kinds of policies at that point. But in any case, I think we certainly should have something like that. With respect to dogs on the beach, I think we could have the kind of policy that Commissioner Stevens suggested. On the other hand, I think we've heard pretty clearly from the captain of the beach patrol that he thinks it's a bad idea to have dogs on the beach during the season while the lifeguards are there. I've heard other people complain that pet owners are not doing the best job of cleaning up after their dogs. And what we have as a draft here in this draft policy in this document is the same policy that we have on the ocean side. That is, dogs during the season would not be allowed on the beach between 9:30 and 5:30. But outside of May 15th to September 15th, it's open season for having your dog on the beach. There's no restriction at all. And I think people are generally pretty happy with that on the ocean side. So yeah, we could discuss and possibly approve the kind of relaxation of the policy that we have in the ocean side for the beach, for the Bay Beach side. But I think that's a matter for the commissioners to discuss. So I don't know, do you want to take some other comments on that particular issue, or do you want me to go back to some of the more specific ones?
Well, I have Mr. Jasinski and then Mr. Bauer. The reason I'm going to Mr. Jasinski first, Mr. Bauer, you've had a couple of comments, and I'll come to you,
Yeah.
Mr. Jasinski.
Yeah, so on the subject of dogs, I've always had a dog down here. I love dogs, love taking my dog to the beach, and I think it's great. And there are two things I'm concerned about. One is Todd, our captain of the lifeguards, was pretty clear that he didn't want his lifeguards put in the position of trying to deal with dogs running on the beach while they were on duty. So if we were going to allow that, I'd really want to have him involved in the discussion. But the second thing I'd point out is Dewey Beach. It's not completely unique, but it's a little bit rare in how much we allow dogs to roam freely off leash. And I think it's great. And to some extent, I think we kind of have a little bit of a detente policy, so to speak, where people kind of understand that during kind of the more crowded time, during the day, in the summer, if they're out there lying out, if they're not a dog owner and they don't particularly like dogs running around them, that there won't be dogs at that time. And then the rest of the time, it's understood it's okay. The vast majority of the town absolutely supports dogs, as do I. And I just think that kind of doing it the way we do it on the Oceanside Beach, on the Bayside Beach, to keep a similar policy, and also from what the chairman of the lifeguard says, I think that's probably the safest choice to go with, so we don't have a situation where, for lack of a better word, some people are getting upset.
Is that all, Mr. Jasinski?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, I've had a chance to talk to a lot of people on this, and Jim, that owns the dog daycare place, brought up some very interesting points on it. What's more crowded, the Bay Beach or a sidewalk during the season? We're allowing the dogs on the sidewalk, but we won't allow them on the beach during certain times. And then the second issue that comes up comes to when the lifeguards are on duty, and I'm assuming our town managers, and Todd are going to sit down and say, hey, we don't need a 24/7 lifeguard at the Bay Beach. There's no one there Monday to Friday. Saturdays and Sundays, there's enough people there. There's enough crowd that would justify us to do it. So my suggestion is, if we're going to create a policy that says no dogs on the beach, we have to have an enforcement mechanism to it, which in this case is our lifeguards, correct? So if there's no lifeguard there, we have a rule that there's no one that's going to enforce it, which, I say this all the time. So I understand that the spirit of the rule, but where's it going to get us? If we don't enforce it, it doesn't exist. So my suggestion is maybe we can change the language to say while lifeguard on duty, because we've already made the business decision that, hey, there's 5 people back there. I'm not putting a lifeguard. And on top of that, we're saying, yeah, but there's no dogs back there because it's too crowded. So you can't have it both ways. We gotta pick a side. And I think that it ties hand in hand with, the same decision that says, hey, what days are we going to put a lifeguard back there? Obviously the first and second week in July, we might have a lifeguard there every day. We may not. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. I do have some comments myself. I would prefer if we follow through and institute the draft regulations as put forth by Mr. Persinger, and say we've never tried it. Let's try it. Let's see what happens on that beach, and then have the town manager and the town captain of the lifeguards come back and tell us, hey, it's not working. It's ridiculous to have a lifeguard there, or it's not working. There's too many people. We shouldn't we shouldn't do what we're doing. You know, we have to keep the dogs off the beach. So I would say let's institute, in my opinion, let's institute the draft regulations that Commissioner Persinger worked so hard on, and then give it a time period to have the town manager come back and inform us what is and what is not working. I personally told you before that if I could have a dog, if I wasn't traveling so much, I'd have a dog and be walking on the beach with my dog. I think it's the right thing to do. But I've also seen where dogs on that beach have been a nuisance to people, to families that are just trying to be there on the beach. So, and I think it's getting more and more crowded as we go along. As Commissioner Bauer mentioned to me the other night when we were out there, it's more and more crowded. It won't be long and it'll be just like the Bay Beach.
Yeah. In the evenings, it's crowded. During the day, not many.
Yeah. Mr. Persinger, do you want to go ahead with?
I'm just a little, I don't know if confused is the right word about your last comment. Basically what you're suggesting, what's in the draft is the ocean policy.
That's
And you're
correct.
suggesting that we stay with that.
I'm suggesting that we stay with the entire draft that you presented to us for rules on the bay and bay side of the town, Bay Beach, and give it a time period and let the town manager tell us what is and is not working.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm confused about is that, I mean, if we have a policy on the ocean side and there seems to be no objection to that policy, it seems to
I
work.
agree.
I don't think there shouldn't be any expectation in my mind that the same policy wouldn't work on the bay side. I think the question is that both Commissioner Stevens and Commissioner Bauer raised is whether or not we could relax that a bit, recognizing that we may not actually have a lifeguard there posted during every day of the season. And that perhaps this was Commissioner Bauer's suggestion that we might allow dogs on the beach year round as long as there's no lifeguard there. And so I guess that is the choice that we would make on those two policies, on that policy rather, with respect to dogs. Now, does the town manager perhaps have a comment? Maybe we could get his input as well.
When I want to interject one thing, Mr. Stevens had his hand up, then we'll go to the town manager. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Bauer, Commissioner Bauer's idea is quite good, and because it takes the decision making out of the lifeguards as to whether or not if there's too many dogs, there's too much an issue, and if the head of the lifeguards feels like there just isn't enough of a presence of humans on the beach, and they don't want to put a lifeguard out there during the week, then I would say it's a good idea to not necessarily enforce the fact that people can't walk their dog on the beach. But if there's a lifeguard, meaning there's people to be protected and that there's possible issue with the public, then no dogs on the beach. I think it's a fair middle ground, and makes sense from a policy perspective. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Persinger called on Mr. Zolper. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Persinger. So I would agree with Mr. Bauer. I think when the lifeguard's on duty, we have somebody down there that can enforce the ordinances for us. When the lifeguard's not on duty, you are not going to have somebody down there. So we may want to look at the dogs can be there when the lifeguard's not there. When the lifeguard's there, you can't have a dog on the beach during the hours that the lifeguard's there from 10 to 5.
Mr. Persinger.
I think I'm basically okay with that proposal. But I think in saying that, I think, we really need to monitor compliance and really be prepared to take action. If we do this relaxation, we really need to be prepared to take action if dogs are not properly under control. If we're getting a lot of complaints or pet waste is not being properly disposed of. I mean, if dog owners want the ability to have better access to the Bay Beach than they have to the Ocean Beach, I think they need to be responsible so that we don't have to limit the access to the beach just as we do on the ocean side. But I think it's worth a try.
Any other comments from anyone? Mr. Bauer.
Sorry to chime in again. So as we're going to do something, this is not just applying to one street. This is going to apply to Dagsworthy and Reed and every beach, correct? Or are we just selectively picking the one beach?
right now we're working on the one beach and I'm sure it'll expand to the rest.
So I don't know if we could insert that in there that, I don't want the people on Reed Avenue and Dagsworthy where people walk their dogs to say, wait a second.
Well,
Yeah, this is-
if it's not
No
covered in the
lifeguard there,
regular,
so
if it's
yeah,
not
it sort of
covered in,
mitigates that
if it's,
issue.
if it's not covered in the regulation, you don't have to worry about that. Mr. Zolper.
The issue is going to be enforcing it on those other beaches. Whereas when you have a lifeguard down on the beach at the end of Van Dyke, we'll be able to enforce the ordinances and the beach rules. The other Dagsworthy, those other places, Sunset Beach that we have down at the end of Dagsworthy, I don't think the town should really be down there enforcing the dog rules on those beaches. I mean, that's my opinion. I think Van Dyke's a little different. And when Todd's got his folks down there, we enforce the rules. And when Todd doesn't have his lifeguard down there, unless it becomes a situation that's brought to our attention where there's just too many dogs and we find that we have some people getting bit by dogs and some other issues, as Commissioner Persinger pointed out, I think we look at this just as Van Dyke Street.
I agree. Absolutely. That's what it was written for. That's what we're covering. Mr. Persinger, you had your hand up?
No, I did not. I have some other issues to raise, but no, I do not have my hand up right now.
Well, I think we ought to move on with the issues.
Okay. Well, then there are a couple of statements that we have in these draft rules. And I'll read the first one. This is the last one under the Baywalk rules. Except as provided herein, all municipal laws, ordinances, and regulations shall apply at all times. The question for me is, does this really need to be in a set of rules for the public? I'm not sure it's going to have very much meaning for the public. And it also seems to imply in some sense that we could and maybe have within these rules made some exceptions to some of the laws and ordinances and regulations that we have in town. So I guess this is a question both for the attorney as well as for the commissioners, whether or not this kind of language is needed. It's both under the Baywalk rules as well as the public beach and gazebo rules.
I'm sorry, what was the statement, Mr. Persinger, again, the exception?
The statement is, it's the last one under the Baywalk, and I think it's the last one under public beach and gazebo. It says, except as provided herein, all municipal laws, ordinances, and regulations shall apply at all times.
I assume that, go ahead, Mr. Townsend.
I don't think that's terribly important language to include either. I hadn't occurred to me looking at it, but I think I don't think that is advancing the ball in terms of giving the public notice as to what they can and can't do. And to the extent that it implies that we can pass rules which violate our own laws or other laws, I mean, that would be inaccurate. So I don't think it serves much of a purpose, so I'd recommend removing it.
Would it be fair to say, unless there's any complaints from the commissioners, we would go ahead and remove those two statements? I don't hear any complaints from the commissioners, and you have the direction, Mr. Persinger.
Great, thank you. Then the next marginal comment I have, this is under the beach and gazebo rules. We have a statement here, beach chairs and umbrellas are permitted on the Bayside Public Beach. No problem with that, but during the workshop, there was some discussion about whether or not we should be more concerned about tents and structures like that provide shade but are bigger than an individual umbrella. And I think the town manager indicated that he would be talking with the beach patrol captain about this issue. So just wanted to follow up on this, see if there is a need for reconsideration here, or should we just go with this as it is on the Oceanside Beach?
I'm going to make a comment, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Zolper. I am in favor of banning the tents, like the larger tents like Rehoboth has already done. But I asked Todd, I mentioned this before, I asked our beach patrol captain about this, and he was not in favor of it at the time. And I don't think he's in favor of it now. So I think we should just leave it like it is on the, as it is on the ocean side. Mr. Zolper?
When I spoke to Todd about it, he wants to keep it the same as it is over on the ocean side. But I think given the beach over there is about 150 feet from the wall there, the marina over to the second lamppost there on the Baywalk, I'll have to talk a little bit more to Todd about that. I think, there's some of those tents can get rather large, and I think we need to possibly have some restrictions on those, but I'll talk to Todd about those.
Well, I think that right now we've got to somewhat decide, unless there's a complaint from the commissioners, should we leave it like it is now, Mr. Stevens?
Do we need to include it all? Because it seems redundant or excess language. It'd be assumed that people can bring at least chairs to the beach and
Oh, they do.
and umbrellas. So I don't know if we need that. One of the things I don't know is clear, and I'm trying to remember when I was at the beach side, is where the lifeguard actually sits farther back from the water line than they do versus the beach side. And when you're on the beach, there are no umbrellas supposed to be in front of them at all.
That's
So I
correct.
think consistent application of that would make sense and be logical, so that they have a clear line of sight.
Are you asking whether we need it at all, or whether you?
I don't know if we need that sentence at all, because it's just naturally implied, and let the captain lifeguards or the lifeguards dictate the policies based upon how busy the beach is.
Mr. Person, do you have a comment about that?
Not really. I mean, I don't think it hurts to have it there. I'm not sure whether it hurts to take it out. I'm not sure.
Just my own personal comment, I think we ought to just leave it in and leave it like it is. Any other comments from any other commissioners? We have a choice here now, then either take it out or leave it like it is. I'm going to go down the line very quickly about how you like it. Mr. Stevens.
Take it out.
Take it out. Mr. Jazinski.
Doesn't really matter either way to me, but it can be out or in.
I'm
It does
sorry,
not
Mr.
matter.
Jazinski.
It does not matter to me.
You're not
which
going
way do
to.
it.
That's not really what I was asking for. And Mr. Bauer.
Take it out.
And I would rather leave it in.
And,
Mr.
and I think
Persinger.
I think I would leave it in, just because I'm not sure if there isn't some unintended consequence by taking it out.
So we have two, take it out, one, he doesn't care.
Come on, David.
and two, leave
Come on,
it in.
David.
I
No
was just
swing
making
vote.
sure that I could be the deciding vote on this.
Swing vote.
rather than Dale.
Come on, make a
You are
decision.
now, David, you are now
No
the
pressure,
deciding
David.
vote.
You guys can leave it in. The less changes to this, the better from my perspective.
Okay. Then we have 3-2, leave it in. Okay. Mr. Persinger, anything else?
Yes, we have a provision that is taken, I think, directly from the ocean side policy, and that is, there's several items that are prohibited on the beach. Drinking funnels, more than 3 beverage containers, more than 3 empty beverage or food containers, and then glass containers. And I think the beach patrol captain has commented that enforcement of the 3 beverage containers and perhaps the 3 empty beverage or food containers is difficult. I think the drinking funnels prohibition probably comes from an earlier time. Perhaps when that was a real problem on the ocean beach. I'm not sure it's so much of an issue now. The suggestion here for consideration is maybe we just only prohibit glass containers on the beach in this provision, and just delete the other 3.
For this
Agreed.
beach, for the Bayside beach.
Yes.
Any comments,
fine.
Mr. Stevens,
That's fine.
Yeah, I agree too.
Mr. Jazinski?
I'm sorry, Dale. I got distracted. What was the thing?
I thought maybe we'd get another, I don't care. I was gonna laugh with you. Now, do we want to eliminate all the items that are on the prohibited list from the ocean side onto the bay side, or do we want to?
Except for
They
glass.
seem somewhat superfluous to me. I would say so. I would be more on getting them out than leaving them in.
Well, I'm saying in my opinion, if they have the restriction on the ocean side, I think we ought to have it on the bay side, that if it helps him enforce it.
But I think what Gary was saying is that it should be on both sides.
That's one suggestion. We would have
Yeah.
to change the code.
That we don't want glass because of obvious reasons. Funnels are outdated, and it's tough to enforce the food and the beverages.
Well,
So
that's exactly what I'm saying. If we if we did not have it on the bay side, we would have to take it out of the ocean side. And I don't think that's what their town lifeguards want. The
Well,
captain of the lifeguard.
I'm not,
Bill, can you weigh in on that?
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Bauer.
Sorry.
Mr. Persinger, you were making a
no,
comment?
no, I'd like to hear from Mr. Zolper.
Mr. Zolper, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I think Captain Fritchman would like to have those things taken out with the exception of the glass container, not only on the bay side, but on the ocean side.
You've talked to him about that, that's good.
I forwarded that email from the lifeguard captain to Commissioner Persinger when I added some additional information from both the police department and the lifeguards.
All right, then I'm gonna go along with what the captain of the lifeguard said, and then at a later time, we'll have to take it out of the other rules. Because right now, the item is discussing rules on the bay side.
Okay, I think that is the last issue that I wanted to raise on these. I think just as a general comment, I think, if we settle on this set of rules today, I think we need to go back to the town code to make sure that we have not done something that is in conflict with the code. And I think we have one example right now. We have to make a change in the code with respect to those prohibited items. But there may also be some situations where something is prohibited on the ocean beach, or maybe the code is specific to, not specific to just the ocean beach, but it just talks about beaches and would apply to both. And we may have done something in the policy here. So I think we need to go back and make sure that we have things consistent, both with the, make sure that the town code and this set of policies are consistent. But I mean, I don't think we need to do that today. I think we settle on a set of policies today, and then we can go back and do that cleanup later.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. Mr. Bauer, last comment here before we take a.
Yeah, so this is for Gary. So right below glass containers, we have the section there on dogs. And this is for discussion here. I don't know if we're all in agreement here to change that to when lifeguard on duty, as opposed to that last sentence there where it says 9:30 to 5:30, May 15th, September 15th. Change that to when lifeguard's on duty.
Well, let's find out. Mr. Persinger, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think I'm in favor of that policy, yes.
Mr. Stevens, your comment?
I'm in favor of that.
Mr. Jazinski, your comment?
I'm in favor of that as well.
Mr. Bauer, obviously, I think you're in favor of that, and I will go along with the crowd. I'm not quite in favor of it, but I think it's a workable solution. So yes, Mr. Bauer, that would be changed.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to have to explain it to my dog that he couldn't go back there anymore, but just kidding.
She would have listened to you anyway.
Mr. Persinger, you want to move forward with?
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, those are all the issues that I wanted to raise. I mean, I'm ready to offer a motion that we adopt this set of policies with the amendments that we have discussed and agreed to during our discussion here.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Stevens. That was quick. Any further discussion, Mr. Persinger?
I would like to amend my motion just a bit. I would like to ask that the town manager report back to us on the more specific policies that they intend to implement with respect to administrative approval of special events and other policies for which administrative control or guidance is necessary in administering these rules.
Gotcha. Mr. Stevens, you seconded it, or you
I will second
accept it?
Yes.
Okay. It's properly moved and seconded on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any against say nay. Any abstention? Hearing none. Actually, that was unanimous. All right, we'll move on to item number 4. Discuss and possibly vote to create an assigned balance within the general fund titled broadband infrastructure, quote unquote, to set aside funds for assistance on 5G and other small wireless facilities and support structures. Mr. Persinger, again, your item that you're going to cover.
Yeah, I think that it is very likely that we are going to, at some point, I don't know if it will be today, but I think we're going to vote to approve some expenditure for consulting assistance to help us on the 5G issue, both with the permitting process and probably some other technical and engineering issues. And in doing so, it's not a budgeted expense. We don't have a formal way of paying for that kind of consulting help. So the proposal here is that we, within the general fund, create an assigned balance called broadband infrastructure that would allow us to pay for those consulting services. And what I've suggested here is that we allocate $40,000 for that purpose. And I've called it broadband infrastructure because it ties into, potentially, it ties into the one of the accepted uses for the federal stimulus money that we believe the town is going to qualify in the future. And hopefully we would never have to tap into that. But if things really got crazy, there would be another source of funds that we could tap into for hopefully guiding us toward a better position with respect to 5G poles and the equipment that's necessary for those. And just to be clear, this does not require a new bank account. I think in the past, when we have set aside money for certain activities, we've gone out and created a new bank account and we've kind of locked the money into that bank account. There's no need to do that. This is purely an accounting designation, but it does give us a pot of money that we can draw on for paying for this kind of service.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Persinger. I'm going to make a comment, then Mr. Stevens. I'm all in favor of this. I think it's the right thing to do, and it does not preclude us from just limiting it eventually to broadband infrastructure. There might be other items that we would also have an assigned balance within the general fund. So, Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, Dale, you and I are on the same page. I was wondering if there's a better term, not a better terminology, but a different terminology to protect the beaches and the dunes in case there's something that we don't know see in the future that's from a 5G perspective. So is it possible to have a dune and beach infrastructure protection fund or something? I know it's a lot of words, but just so that we have it out there in case we need it in the future, in addition to 5G.
In the future, we could institute an assigned fund for anything, but it would be somewhat limited. Mr. Jasinski.
So we've got a lot of money sitting in the general fund, and so I understand that anything that's not already in the budget, we've got it. The town manager has to come to us to approve anyway if it's more than a few $1,000s. So how is this different than if he presents us with a contract and we just approve? We approve it as it comes along what's needed to be spent. I'm not saying I'm opposed to this. I'm just kind of wondering why we need to have a set aside fund rather than just approving expenses as they come in, depending on what's needed.
Well, it's not a budgeted expense. I can't speak from an accounting perspective. I'm not an accountant, but this was a proposal that we ran through the auditors. They thought this was a perfectly good way to do this. And I think having a pot of money like this shows a real commitment to the town that we are going to pursue this in a very diligent way and do the best job that we can to improve our position with respect to the 5G infrastructure.
Mr. Jasinski, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it answers my question. Like I said, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just not really sure why we have to do it. But if we want to do it, we want to do it. So yeah. I'm okay with it.
Mr. Persinger, is there a motion you would like to put forward?
Yeah, I would like to move that we approve the establishment of an assigned fund for broadband infrastructure within our general fund.
Is there a second for the motion? There's a second from Mr.
I'll second that.
There's a proper motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Gary, did you quantify the dollar figure?
He said 40,000.
Yeah. I said, yes, I would like to add $40,000 as the amount of money to include in that assigned fund balance.
So is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any against say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, discuss and possibly vote to hire a small cell wireless 5G consultant company. There's a lot of options here. I don't think we're properly informed yet to actually hire a specific company. I think we ought to get some more information. And I think that instead of just putting it off, kicking the can down the road, I think we should ask our town manager and with the staff here at Town Hall that have already been involved in the 5G operation to get involved in this and find a company they can recommend to us there have been 4 companies in so far that have asked to be involved. Are there any other comments from any commissioners? Mr. Bauer.
I think that's a great idea because, interviewing consultants in public meetings here would just take forever.
Right.
And I think, if, we can come up with some recommendations and we'll get final approval on it and we get out of the day-to-day business.
Mr. Persinger and then Mr. Jasinski.
Yeah, I agree with that approach. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Let the town staff come back to us with a specific recommendation.
Mr. Jasinski.
I was just going to say, I'd like to motion that we ask the town manager to select an interview from a variety of consultants in this area and report back to us with his recommendation and the cost by X date. The date that he thinks he can do it is, he'll fill in the blank on that right now. And then we can ask him to get back to us by that date.
Is there a second for that motion? There is a proper second. There's a motion and a second on the floor. Other than an absolute final date come back from Mr. Zolper, is there any other comment or discussion about the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. We'll go on to item number 6, review the March financials. Mr. Zolper.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Let me grab that. So I sent an email out earlier because of the holiday, the Good Friday, and because our meetings early in the month, we weren't able to post these, but we were able to get you, each one of you were sent an email with the numbers, some rough numbers. So I can go through those if you'd like. Commissioners want me to go through each one?
Well, I think you might give us a general overview of it, and then the commissioners might have questions.
Okay, for the month of March, we're about $40,000 in the black for the month of March. And for 2021, as of right now, we're in the black about $500,000. I can go into individual numbers if you need me to.
Are there any questions from the commissioners you would like to put forth? Mr. Stevens, and then Mr. Persinger.
Bill, when will the financial statements be ready for review?
Good question. So on the 19th, when we have our next meeting, we will present them at that time.
That's great. Yeah, I don't think you need to go any more. My opinion, you don't need to go any more detail.
Mr. Persinger.
A question. It looks like at the bottom of your notes here, it looks like once you add back in depreciation and take the set-asides out, it looks like there's a surplus of about $600,000. And is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, on this $600,000. That's correct.
Okay, and so March would have added about $30,000 to that. And from what I remember of the February financial reports, I thought we were somewhere in the 550 or so, 560 range. So my question is, I know we approved some expenditures out of last year's money. I think it was about $106,000 or something.
Correct.
Something. Is that seems like it's not been reflected here? Is that the case?
I believe it is, but I'd ask Sheena to comment on that.
Okay.
So this is what we're still working on. The expenses, we put aside, before I even ran the financials or anything, I put some money, I did one of your set-asides under general fund, where you have your general fund, your transfer tax set aside, your LESO funds, right under the general fund. So you know where the different allocations are. Not all the expense bills have come in for those things. And some of the ones that had, I didn't want, they have to be capitalized. So I
Okay,
put them there so that our accountants can capitalize them instead of them showing up as expenses. If
okay,
you saw as $56,000 expense on, equipment, anybody's going to question it. So that's where it is right now. We're still working on getting everything perfectly aligned so that everything is perfectly transparent and you can see everything. There are a few expenses that are not in there yet. That's why Mr. Zolper stated that it was about 500,000 because we wanted to make sure that we fully got everything. I know there's not $100,000 in more expenses to go, but
okay.
we wanted to make sure that everything was in there. But all your set asides are, about 200,000. They're already taken care of.
Okay, thanks very much.
Mr. Persinger, did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Well, it made me a little confused, but I'll find out at the next meeting. I'm not going to drag this meeting out, but I will ask later on about, are we still at the 599 or we got 100 some to take out of that? So, all right. Any other questions about the financials? Hearing
Other than
none.
it was a phenomenal job.
Phenomenal job.
It was a phenomenal job considering what we went through last year to be. where we're
Oh,
at
yes,
right
sir. I
now. So great
absolutely
job by
agree.
everybody involved.
Thank God for the town hall in general, the employees, and for the fact that we had a lot of houses sold. We'll go to town manager's comments.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I've got a couple items I'm going to go through. One of the items I want to talk to you about, and I sent you an email on this, was we went through the process. We posted, we interviewed, Jim Dedes and I and Sheena interviewed. We selected an individual that we thought would be a good financial director. We sent her the letter, she accepted, and then about a week ago, she came back and said in her current position, they had told her she could work part-time, and then they told her she couldn't. That caused some real issues for us because I had already talked to Luff Associates and told them at the end of the month, we'd only need them to help us with the audit and quarterly reviews. So I went back to Luff, explained the situation, gave me a couple days to think about it. I talked to the auditors about it. I spoke with the mayor about it. Not that I wanted to make this decision, but I went ahead and made the decision that we're going to keep Luff on for the next year. And during that time period, we will post for a new financial director's position. We'll go through the interview process. We'll review the resumes. Luff's going to also help us look at some of those resumes when we get to the very end. But I'll let you know that Luff was very supportive of us hiring somebody in that second position part-time. So as I said, I've made the decision we're going to stay with Luff to do the reconciliations as we're doing right now and also to continue with the payroll. Is there any questions on that?
No.
Go ahead, Bill. Oh, yeah, Mr. Stevens.
Bill, I didn't, did you say you're extending the Luff for how long are you extending the Luff contract?
It'll be 1 year and the actual current cost will stay the same.
Okay.
It's not something that I wanted to do. We really wanted to bring this person in, and I think we showed that by actually offering the job to somebody, and then at the last minute it fell through. But we definitely want to hire a financial director.
Mr. Persinger.
I would just say that I certainly appreciate the effort. I'm sorry that the hire fell through, but I certainly understand. And, your recommendation or your decision, I guess, at this point makes sense.
I agree, Mr. Zolper. I think you made the smart move, and we're going to have to live with it temporarily. And there's going to be some overlap anyway, no matter what. Go ahead. Do you have any other comments, Mr. Zolper?
Just it would have been a hard time if we'd have tried to do this. We would have had to. We have all the summer hires coming in. It just would have been very difficult for Sheena and us to bring somebody in and try to run with it. So thank you for your support on that. We will continue the search for a financial director.
Anything else, Mr. Zolper?
Yes, I spoke to the auditors and Gary Commissioner Persinger came up with a really pretty comprehensive plan. So just to let the commissioners know, we are looking at capital improvement type of funding. We are looking at something you may call or not call a rainy day type of funding, and then the unassigned type of funding. And I sent Commissioner Persinger some notes on that from my conversation and opinion that I got from some of the auditors. And I think we're moving in the right direction. Any questions on that, or any comment for Commissioner Persinger? Sorry.
Mr. Persinger, go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment. What I had done was I put together 3 options based on the discussion that we had with the 3 committees. And what I thought would happen was that the auditors would, give us some feedback on that. And I thought we'd be presenting 3 options to those 3 committees again and letting them choose. But instead, they came back with a recommended strategy. And I'm still looking at the details of that. And I want to share that with Commissioner Stevens as well and get his thoughts. I think what I'll do is I'll take a shot at doing what I think the auditors have recommended. And I'll send that to Commissioner Stevens and the town manager. And we'll see where we come out on that. And then we can get back to the committees and get their thoughts on it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. Mr. Zoper, any other comments?
Yeah, I was invited to the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company the other night. They asked me to come in and speak to them. I did. And we've also, in our budget, 2022 budget, we have $5,000 dedicated to them. Also spoke with the Dewey Beach Business Partnerships, spoke with them. The mayor and I attended the Easter egg hunt last week. It was very successful on the beach. People had their masks on. It was run very well by the Dewey Beach Partnership and by the Hyatt and by the volunteers. So thanks to all the volunteers that came out to that. We continue to coordinate with DelDOT on road repair. You'd be very surprised on how many calls we get a week. We probably average 3 calls a week on some type of road repair. Some of those go to the mayor, some will go to the commissioners, but you should all be referring them to me. I would ask that you do that. If you get it, don't try to address it. Send it to me. Let Jim and I address it with DelDOT and we'll get it done. I've got some photos later on that I can show you on how we have been able to address that. Permits will go on sale April 12th for parking. I spoke to one of the consultants for about wireless. It was Cityscape. Had about an hour conversation with them. They sent me some information. I was waiting for the commissioners to make a decision how we wanted to proceed. Now that I see that, I think a date around the 21st or 22nd of this month, I'll be able to, Jim and I will be able to at least talk to probably 2 or 3 other consultants by that time and have a recommendation written up and provide it to the commissioners. The 17th is Dogs in Design. It's an activity down on the Baywalk Beach down there. I'd like everybody to come out, and if there's anybody that wants to volunteer to do that, that's being put on by the Dewey Partnership. Also, we had the Town Hall Power Wash this week. We put in the post for the lifeguard signs. So far, no complaints on those yet. I'm waiting to hear some, but maybe one. I think the lifeguard should have parking spots down there. I'd like to go over real quick the stats. So for code enforcement for this month, there were only 8 citations, but as you know, we're not out actually writing a lot of those, but they were able to collect over 4,300 in fines for the month of March. The police department had 82 business checks. Police assistants were 36. Traffic tickets that were written for the month of March was 127. Police incidents were 73. Criminal arrests were 4. Disorderly conduct was 13. Noise complaints were 6. Also,
Mr. Zober.
Admin, we had 11 temporary dog licenses out there, 26 lifetime dog licenses for the month of March, 18 bonfires. So there's people doing bonfires. I need to address this with code enforcement and our police department to go back and check these when they're done. We're not doing that, and we need to do that when we have these bonfires on the beach. But I was very surprised with 18 for the month of March. 2 FOIA requests that Ashley's been able to cover. And then prepaid on the parking permits, $3,500. The last piece would be the Alderman Court. For the month, it collected approximately $2,600. And at this time, I'd ask, we're continuing with the T2 setup over at Code Enforcement. Captain Fritchman's having his 3rd and final lifeguard tryouts this Sunday at 11:30. He figures between 12 and 16 people will be coming out for this. We'll have a total of about 30 people that tried out for the lifeguards. That's really good compared to some of the other lifeguard departments that I've talked to and the numbers that they're having. And at this time, I'd ask Ashley to go ahead and bring up the photos. So this first one is some of the leveling out and rent and millings that we put down. This is going to be on Dagworthy Street. This is where they're having the art festival on the 17th. You can see where we had Del Dot in the bottom left corner, fill in one of the potholes. And then Don, with some of the equipment that we got that you were able to get with us, we did this the other week. Go ahead, slide. Here's another spot that's down on Reed Street. We were able to fill those in when we got to some complaints about that. Slide. Here you got Todd Frischman doing his lifeguard tryouts. Slide. Continuing with the tryouts, it's a mile run, a 220 pull-ups, push-ups, and then he takes them out to Coastal for the swimming part. Slide. Here's a bench that Don did. Really nice job down on Carolina Street. He moved the fence also. The fence was in disrepair down there. He fixed it. Slide. Another pothole area down in New Orleans Street. Slide. And then the new bins that you're going to see going up around town. Not all of them are done yet, but Don's doing a good job moving through that as quickly as possible. Thanks, Ashley. I appreciate that. As far as the American Rescue Act, this new stimulus bill that was passed, I've registered the town. I've gotten 2 emails from them confirming that we were registered, and I think I emailed the mayor just showing them that we are registered for that, and possibly Commissioner Persinger to let them know that we also did that. We're meeting with the engineers on Wednesday of next week. Mr. Dedes and I are meeting with the engineers. We're going to meet over on Reed Street, and with the chairman of the infrastructure committee is going to meet us over there. And on Monday, we have a meeting at 2 o'clock with the folks from DBE. Pending any questions, that's all I have from the manager's office.
Mr. Zolper, you mentioned over $4,000 collected on fines in March. That's past due fines, is that correct?
That's past due fines from the code enforcement sending
Right.
letters out and making phone calls.
Right, thank you. They're doing a good job over there trying to collect past due items. And the potholes I know, but I hope you tell the other commissioners, you've been calling the state about the potholes, and you mentioned earlier that if they just get in touch with you, if somebody contacts them.
Jim Dedes and I will take care of that. We've got good contact and communications with the state, and they've been very responsive. And I let Representative Schwarzkopf and Senator Lopez know that the other day.
Thank you. Any other questions for the town manager? Hearing none, I'll call on the Easter Bunny, Mr. Paul Bauer, for his commissioner comments.
Well, I'd like to say here that this is almost 70 days. Is it 10 weeks yet, Bill? This is the end of your 9th week, or?
So I started February 2nd. So we're just about to day 70, 68.
68. So great job in a short amount of time. So it's amazing how quickly you've indoctrinated yourself here with every issue that we have in town. So I just want to say thank you for the hard work you did, and also for everybody at Town Hall for the work they did to get us where we're at as we close out the year.
It's truly a team effort.
Yep, everybody's done a phenomenal job this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Any other comments?
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Jazinski.
I was going to say the exact same thing Paul said. Thank you, Mr. Zolper, for letting us know everything and letting the public know everything that the town's getting done. A lot of things happening, and appreciate your leadership.
Mr. Persinger.
Yeah, I will just echo those comments. I think we're making a lot of progress on many fronts, and just keep up the good work.
Mr. Stevens.
Well, I will also echo those comments, but it's what I'd like to make suggestions to town manager. We know that you've been doing so many great things in these commissioner meetings. It's evident in terms of when you go around town and you see these changes, these small elements of change. I would encourage you to consider some level of communication from the town manager to the residents of Dewey Beach to keep them apprised of where we are in certain elements, so they don't necessarily have to hunt. I think if they did have some level of communication from you, it puts the whole town in a better spot than just random connection points. Yeah, Bill.
Mr. Zolper.
So myself and code enforcement, we did meet with the Cape Gazette the other day to talk about some of the things that we're doing with parking, the T2 system, dog enforcement, waste on the beach, and also the new 4-hour parking. So we're pushing it out that way. But Commissioner Stevens, maybe part of Ashley's, the town letter that we send out, we can add some of those things. So thank you.
Yeah, and and I'm glad you brought that up. As we, my wife and I we try to get out to the beach every night for a walk. And one of the things that I have noticed, and as you talk about the dog waste in our Chapter 85 in our ordinance, which has fines set for those people who are not picking up after their dog. And I would just encourage us to see what we can do to enforce that and make it a policy in town. I've always noticed it off season, very rarely during season, but I think it's because we have the daily cleaning of the sweeping of the beach. But I think it's a really important ordinance for us to put in place. And last, in terms of the lifeguard tryouts, I realize I might be a little bit too old for it. But what do you have to do for the mile? How long do you have to get to run in, the 1 mile run in? Do you know?
Mr. Sulper?
Yeah, there's not actually a set time.
Oh, you just have to complete it. I can do that. Okay.
Complete it. And of course, the top candidates will be the ones, considered. Todd has a certain amount of rules by the United States Lifeguard Association keep the town at that level. He has to do certain events.
Thank you.
Great
Anything
job.
else, Mr. Stevens?
I'm great. Thank you.
Thank you. I also will echo my best regards to our new town manager. He's doing an absolutely excellent job. And I've told him so many times, he's probably tired of hearing it. So, but he's got a good reputation, and he's building an even better reputation within the town of Dewey Beach. And as our former mayor used to say, welcome home. So we're going to go into an executive session. Ashley, I'll take a motion to move from public session to executive session. And that motion should read, first one to 29 Delaware C subsection 10004 subsection B subsection 4. The town commissioners will be meeting in executive session to hold strategy sessions involving legal service with respect to potential litigation where an open meeting would have an adverse effect on the town's litigation position, and pursuant to 29 Delaware C 10004 subsection B subsection 2. Preliminary discussion reference possible site acquisition / capital improvement. And is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Bauer.
Do I have
Second.
to reread that?